Tulsa, KGTO 99.1, 1050, K256CR, both Perry Broadcasting Stations. We're going to hold on the line real quick. We do have a couple of guests that we want to talk to that's in studio with us. Steve Hunt as well as Mark Falk. Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Wonderful. It's always great to be here. This station and you all mean a lot to me, and I think I can never say enough about just the fact that you all are here representing the city in a time where there's almost no local ownership, no people talking about what's happening. Y'all are doing it, and I just want everyone to understand what a big deal that is, and just give you all your props and let you know how much I love y'all.
Well, thank you.
Well, yeah, thank you. And I know that we've, of course, had so many conversations. Of course, we have conversations. We're Facebook friends, but I know that we had talked about the arena the last time that you were here, and we can still touch on that. But also, you wanted to talk about the Oakland County Jail. What's on your mind? What are you bringing to the table today? What are we discussing?
Well, Mark and I are part of a group called People's Council for Justice Reform, and we are in a moment, right in the middle of a moment right now, that we really need to all understand what's happening, because there's two different directions things can go.
Okay.
I want to start off by something really amazing that I heard about a month ago when I was hanging out at the cigar lounge, and a place where a lot of people gather that are big in business and things like that. There were a couple of California investors that were there, and one of them, I don't know if he'd had too many old fashions or what, but he was a little bit too honest about what he was doing. He's like, yeah, I'm from California, I've been to Idaho, Wyoming, and we went through a list of states, and he said, I'm now in Oklahoma City buying up a bunch of homes, and he called us the final frontier, as in the final frontier of exploitive, extractive, greed-based capitalism before it's over and there's either a crash, or if we do what we need to do, a new system or a new way of living. And I'd like Mark to kind of add to that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing that I think we need people to know that this isn't a matter of what we can do and what we can't do. It's just a matter of priorities. So we've chosen to spend $1 billion to build a new arena instead of dealing with, and we have Clay Bennett, who's the owner of the OKC Thunder, who has positioned himself as a justice reform advocate, and he helped create and was the main drive behind creating an organization called CJAC, Criminal Justice Advisory Council.
Advisory Council, yeah.
They were created literally by the Chamber of Commerce, and their singular goal was to turn the jail over to a private jail trust. And so they lobbied through the county commissioners, and Brian Mon actually told me when I asked him, I had heard somewhere that all of the people on the jail trust were handpicked by the Chamber of Commerce, and he said, yes, that's true. They even called me and tried to tell me who to appoint, me and Commissioner Brian Mon. And he said, and instead I appointed Ben Brown, who turned out to also be a horrible trust member.
Yeah.
So essentially, they created a jail trust and took over the jail. And I think their ultimate goal from day one was to get rid of the jail from downtown. But our organization, we grew out of the George Floyd movement. It literally was just a handful of people who came together under this issue of greed and corruption, especially at the county level, which of course spills over to the city level because they have the same overlords, to put it bluntly. And what our mantra has really been is that it's a matter of priorities. We have decided that we don't care about the homeless community. We don't care about poverty. We don't care that rent is now averaging over $1,000 a month. We don't care that over half of the people in Oklahoma City have income insecurity. They're not able to pay their bills every month. We don't prioritize mental health. And in fact, we criminalize mental health. And again, Brian Mon one time said, the Oklahoma County Jail is the de facto mental health facility for Oklahoma County, which is horrific. And he also said, that we have to build a bigger jail because of our mental health issues.
So let me ask a couple of questions here. I obviously, with all of the attention that the jail has gotten, I think even someone passed away. I've been at a couple of meetings with some other groups in terms of more people die in the county jail than even in New York and Attica, right? And so, what do we do, right? So, because here's what I think. I'm kind of an outsider, but an insider in terms of having relationships with a lot of these persons who are maybe on these committees. And I think what's happening sometimes, I think we're potentially all trying to pull on the same rope to go in the same direction, but it's not necessarily happening, right? Because there's some challenges that exist even on this grassroots level. We're trying to get everyone at the table to kind of go in the same direction. So how do we then? Tell me, how do we start dealing with some of these issues at that level? Poverty, mental health, and why I have a son who was a county jailer, right? He works in that county jail. So I'm hearing these stories all the time.
Okay. Well, on that, I think it really, first we have to define who we call we. I mean, because I don't think the people in the chamber, on the trust, I don't think they have our interest at hand.
Sure.
And when I say it feels like we're really in the moment, I want to go through a little timeline of some things that have happened since probably 6 weeks ago. On the 25th of April, a kind of almost man lands on moon font appeared on the Oklahoman when Steve Lackmeyer, who is the most careful human being on planet Earth with not upsetting the power structures, he had an article called "Oklahoma City's Development Has the Vibe of the 80s Oil Boom. Are we destined for another bust?" And I was just blown away when I saw that, because I have been thinking that. And I've known Steve Lackmeyer for a long time. I remember when I ran against, he's going to hate me for saying this, but when I ran against Cornette, he pulled me aside and said, "Hey, Steve, don't tell anyone, but I'm really cheering for you," because he didn't want to upset anyone. So that article came out. And then a couple weeks later, we all witnessed the erratic behavior of the mayor in New York City doing a little Coyote Ugly dance on a bar in New York City. You know, the private equity capital of the world, telling the crowd, there's nowhere I would rather be than here. And that was like, oh my goodness, he's finally telling the truth. He's around Wall Street and the private equity places, Madison Avenue, and he's saying there's nowhere I'd rather be. Yeah, exactly. Well, the next day, the erratic behavior continued when Mayor Holt, for the first time, posted something about the jail. You know, he's been radio silent on the issue of the jail because he's very calculated, very careful about not upsetting the right people, and so on. But on the 9th of May, he posted bragging about the decrease in numbers in the jail. Okay, well, there's a couple big problems with that. The first one is, why are you going to brag about reduced numbers when you have the most deaths of any jail in America? And just Tuesday, 2 days ago, Jamie Lynn Jetton, I don't know if that's how you pronounce his name, Jetton, died. Why? Third-degree burglary, which means that he maybe broke into a car with the intent of stealing something. And he goes to jail, and he died. Here we have a mayor with a past that is very undesirable. You know, he worked for Dennis Hassert as page supervisor, and we know who Dennis Hassert is. Then he worked for Bush. Then he started writing editorials about the war in Iraq. Then he was a state senator where he wrote a bill to drug test people on welfare, knowing full well more than half those monies go to children.
Sure.
And now we have him bragging about the jail numbers when we have more deaths, and his number one advisor, Pat McFerrin, was the guy who was against marijuana reform, which is the reason those numbers are low. So we need to start talking about the power structures of the city and how we aren't pulling on the same rope. I mean, he won't even let us touch the rope.
Sure. And you're right. We do have to define who we are or who he is, right? But I'm not necessarily saying or asking for those, because there are some other players in our community that are not Chamber of Commerce, that they are not the governor, they're not the mayor. They're people like you that are out here fighting for the East Side, fighting for prison reform or what have you. You have people like some of our city council people who are fighting for, for places being food deserts and all of those kinds of things. So I think there's a great need for community conversation with people. It doesn't have to be commerce. It just has to be people who are who are wanting to sit down and think about how do we change this. I grew up in a community where 3 people died on death row. I grew up in a community that watched people sell drugs, crack cocaine, marijuana all day long, right? I'm from that place, and so how do we change it, right? And it has to be people who are serious about it. And there's going to be, you guys, Steve, I know I met you at the Cigar Lounge, but I heard a lot about you just on the street, far more than just in the Cigar Lounge. So there are players out there that we all need at this table to talk about some of these things. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, I agree with that. But again, it's really a matter of what do we want to prioritize.
Sure, I agree.
So when we can't talk about the jail, sadly, without talking about the arena. Why are we giving $1 billion to build an arena when the average arena is half funded by the owners? Here they're funding 5%.
Sure.
And for a guy like Clay Bennett who says, I'm a champion of criminal justice reform, well, you just took the money that could have been used to deal with the homeless population. We were in Kansas City about 3 weeks ago, and we visited a area where they're building tiny homes in Kansas City. And Kansas City's new motto is Kansas City where no one sleeps on the street. I mean, literally, they are addressing it head on. And we could solve our entire homeless population with about less than a third of what we're going to spend on that arena. We could build mental health facilities with another couple of $100 million would I think largely solve our mental health crisis, and then drug and alcohol addiction.
Sure.
And we know that over half of the people in the county jail have severe mental health issues, and that's based from the jail administrator herself. That's what she has said. And as a result, we now have a situation where we can't do everything. We can't create this constant churn of tear down and build up and tear down, like we tore down the church at 36th and Walker, and now 140 units just got approved last week to be built on that one piece of property. So our focus and our drive is just to build, and as a result, we now have one of the highest eviction rates in the country, and that adds to our homeless population, and that happens because we have raised our rent. It's over $1,000 now for the average rent. Of our evictions last year, over a third of them were out-of-state landlords. So we have a real problem, and I hate to do the carpetbagger interloper thing, but that's part of our problem. We want to just grow, and unchecked growth, unless you say, no, we can't leave these people behind, and we can't house them in a jail. Sure. And that's what creates the mess. It's not the location. I'm sorry, but it's not the location. It's the administration, and it's the mentality that we would rather incarcerate, and we would rather spend our money on sports. And I'm not anti-OKC Thunder. I'm anti-billionaires milking the taxpayer for all that money. If we say we had to give them that money, well, Clay Bennett, if he's truly a champion of justice reform, he should say, I'm going to donate half of that to end homelessness and mental health issues in our city. And that's where we have to prioritize. People have to demand it. We finally reached a point where it's not partisan. Sure. It doesn't matter if you're Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, Independent, Commie, it doesn't matter what you are.
Sure.
You know somebody who has either been homeless, close to being homeless, has mental health or drug or alcohol addiction problems, and those people are now coming to us from all walks of life. And I think us coming together beyond party politics, that's what fixes it.
Well, there's so many things I wanted to say just real quick before you guys, keep going. But I mean, you're talking about, the tiny homes. I know that Pivot, which is an organization that's actually, building some of these tiny homes. They're doing that for children or young adults that are, of course, aging out of foster care, and also, helping with the veterans. But I agree with you guys. Hopefully, they'll be able to help those that are not, of course, the young adults and the vets and things or whatnot. Some of the people that are downtown and under the bridges, they'll be able to get that same assistance as well. I think about you guys talking about the mental health issue, and that's a huge issue, and I agree with you guys. But I think that this is just me, and I say this with all due respect. I feel like when we're talking about mental health issues, those are targeted towards people that look like you. They get a lot of those services. When our young men are incarcerated, they're not looked at and diagnosed as having mental
Right.
issues.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
not. And I feel like that's unfair.
Yeah.
I really do. So if you're going to have mental illness and mental issues, that shouldn't have a color. That shouldn't have. Go ahead, Mark. I see you. And then also, I wanted to talk to you, Mark, because you were talking about that jail, and I know that we've had the Commissioner Kerry Bloomer in the here on the show a few times. In Oklahoma, of course, we approved the $260 million bond vote back in 2022, and now they're wanting to double it, and now it's not like over $600 million that they're looking at now. And who's going to foot the bill for that? So there's a lot of unanswered questions here, and a lot of situations that we need to touch on. Go ahead.
I want you to always feel free to say what you said, because I understand the privileges that I've had throughout my life, and I understand the costs. And I do understand now that, because, as someone who's very aware of the fact that Black Americans, Eastsiders, are without question the most politically astute part of our society because of their life experiences, and they're working together to get past those things, and seeing now these forces that are emerging, seeing that Black Americans are having their moment and wanting to integrate them into the system and just turn them into versions of themselves, preserving decaying systems of power. There's nothing more offensive to me than that, because this moment was supposed to be Black Americans leading out of this, because they know the problems, because they've experienced them more than anyone. And Bennett and Holt are using Black Oklahoma City people to preserve these decaying systems of power, and the ones that understand, they're pushing them aside.
So here's the thing, and I hear you. We've already passed for the new arena, right?
Yep.
Right. So I think the focus is forward. Let's engage in a conversation. We can expose all of what is out there, but how then do we move forward? Right.
That's what I did last time, and I said, it's passed. So since Perry is the locally owned radio station in Oklahoma City, there's no reason they shouldn't have those Thunder broadcast rights. And the power structures laughed and said, no, we're giving it to Nevada-based Citadel. So if we make that mistake again and say, oh, well, we need to just do this, it's going to happen all over again, because these people warrant our distrust. And I have documents that show Clay Bennett has taken out massive loans, leveraging the Thunder for those loans, which is, I believe, the reason he took over the jail, because a person of color on the east side is worth nothing to Clay Bennett. Lock them up, they're worth $40,000, $50,000 a year through phone card contracts, medical contracts, food contracts. And so why does he need all this money? Why does he need a new arena? Well, in September of 22, Dorchester Capital's IPO fell through. And then all this stuff started happening.
Well, and let's talk about some solutions. I'll give you a really simple one. You hear repeatedly that if we don't approve this jail location, which, by the way, the one they finally,
It failed.
it failed 6-1, and
Yeah.
Holt was the only yes
one.
vote.
Yeah, my son was at the meeting.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah,
yes,
yeah. Then,
yeah.
they keep telling us, well, we're going to lose this $50 million in ARPA funds, but that's BS. That money is money that could go and should go rightfully into the communities. So my idea on that, because we had to do the same thing, we filed a lawsuit to force them to give back $25 million in CARES Act fund a couple of years ago, and they kept saying, well, nobody's asked me for it. We don't think there's a demand for it. We had that $25 million got put back out there, and within a day and a half, that money was gone through application. That's how many people needed that money. That $50 million could be and should be not used to build a mental health facility and criminalize mental health. They're doing it because they don't have the money to finish the jail. They knew it before they passed the bond issue. We did the research. We knew that a jail was a $700 million proposition, but they did $260 million because it replaced existing bonds and they could sell that to us. So they said, give us a third of the money to build a jail, and then we'll come back and act surprised in 2 years. But what if you took that $50 million and instead of just holding it over our head like a threat, which is what they always do. And Midwest City, anybody out, because this is county money, so it can't be Oklahoma City, but Midwest City, any of the communities, Dell City, Edmond, the Village, all of these communities said, well, we have our own needs. That money could be spent on community-based mental health.
Sure.
Because to your point earlier, we are not going to serve the minority and also just all of the underserved communities unless we give them the money.
Sure.
And let them enact their own solutions. Who better knows what Eastside needs when it comes to mental health and drug and alcohol addiction and improving the neighborhoods? And ARPA funds can even be spent on infrastructure. So all of those things, what if we divvied that money up and gave it to the communities and said, here, this is at least going to give you a start on serving your own community. Instead, they want to control those dollars, and I guarantee you, whatever facility they build will just be a feeder for the jail, and it will be disproportionately minorities and poor people in that facility, just like they're disproportionately in the jail. The people who get help will be white, the people who get jailed will not be.
Sure.
Well, Mark, this has really been some great conversation, and also Steve, and we are going to have to wrap it up. We do have another guest, of course, that we need to get on the line. But let me do this. For people that are listening and they would like to follow you, do you guys have any social media handles?
We do. You can find the People's Council for Justice Reform on Facebook. Follow us there. We hear from people inside the jail, families, unfortunately, of people who have passed away every week, and we talk to them. And what you hear in the news is only 1/100th of how ugly that jail is. You can find us there, and I would just tell everybody, demand solutions. I would tell the communities and the cities, we can use that money. Quit doing a rush to build a jail. That we don't need a bigger jail. If we do the other solutions first, we cut the population in half, and now we need a smaller jail.
Okay, real quick, Steve.
And Steve Hunt, you can follow me on Facebook. Any questions you have? This $50 million. I mean, if we find a way to divert it to other folks, we're going to want to talk to people who have ideas. This is huge. And once again, it's such a privilege to be here. I love y'all. It's what an amazing accomplishment this place is, that y'all are still here and fighting for the people.
Well, thank you so much. We appreciate you. And, of course, we'll be right back with the Open Mic Talk Show. And up next, we'll be talking to Hanson Durrani, so keep it locked.